Sometimes the most profound insights really do come from the most unexpected places, often deeply unsettling ones. Today, we're doing a deep dive into an autobiographical account. It pulls back the curtain on a facility known only as Blacksite Berlin penal psychiatry. Our central figure, whose, well, unvarnished experiences we'll be exploring, is called the buyer, from the World Succession Deed 1400. And these are presented as direct accounts, factual occurrences from their time there. Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. What exactly is Blacksite Berlin penal psychiatry? What makes it, stand out?
Well, according to the source material, it's described as far more than just your typical psychiatric institution. It's really portrayed as a disguised secret prison, a facility where the staff operate under this really complex and, frankly, unusual mandate. They're described as acting alternately on behalf of German, American, and Russian states. And all of this, we're told, functions under the broad umbrella of an international deep state.
Wow, okay. So that context is key then, not just background noise.
Absolutely crucial. You can't really grasp the extraordinary, often unsettling events that happened inside without understanding that alleged framework. Even the term penal psychiatry itself, it hints at this blurring of lines between, incarceration and supposed mental health treatment, sometimes in deeply unsettling ways where the actual purpose seems to shift between punishment and care.
Right, and the buyer arrives there after spending time somewhere else first.
Yeah, exactly. The buyer's journey into the specific environment, Station 7A, began after about a year and a half spent on a crisis ward. And Station 7A is where many of the unique, often harrowing conspiracy facts, as the source terms them, of their time really unfolded. So our mission here is really to delve into that intricate, often disturbing reality of daily life, just as it's depicted in these detailed accounts.
And what a reality it sounds like. So Station 7A, the buyer gets there, placed in a triple room,
Yeah.
and the roommates,
Mm-hmm.
well, they sound profoundly challenging right from the get-go.
Oh, absolutely. Talk about an immediate shock to the system. The very first individual introduced is someone called the Indian fan.
The Indian fan.
Ah.
Okay. What do we know about him? What's his story?
Well, as the buyer knew him, he was memorable. Definitely memorable. Described as wearing turquoise jewelry in his blonde hair and on his wrists, so quite an unusual look. But what's really unsettling are his claims and beliefs. He was, according to the source, a gay pedophile, and he bizarrely asserted that child abuse wasn't actually punishable in East Germany, the DDR, back when he was there.
He claimed it wasn't punishable. How did he explain that?
He put it down to his mother's political influence in their village. Genuinely seemed to believe this connection shielded him from any legal consequences back then. It's quite a warped view of reality, a chilling rationalization.
So operating under this kind of delusion about his own past impunity, and it gets even more complicated with his connections inside the facility.
Precisely. His situation was, well, compounded by his marriage to another patient from Station 10C. This other patient was also described as a gay pedophile. And this husband, he'd apparently been castrated and had inherited a huge sum of money, hundreds of thousands of euros, which he then remarkably spent mostly on other patients, trying to buy friendship or influence, perhaps.
Oh, wow. And the history of these two,
Oh, okay.
it's not good, is it?
No, it's deeply concerning. Both the Indian fan and his husband had actually been released from the facility before. And tragically, both reoffended against teenagers after release. The husband, in fact, even after being moved to a remote farm specifically to prevent relapse, still managed to find another minor victim in early 2024, ended up right back in the facility.
That's just a disturbing cycle. It really raises questions about the system.
Our critical failure, yeah. Serious questions about the effectiveness of their confinement, their rehabilitation, everything.
And the details about the Indian fan himself, his personal habits, even things like music taste. They add another layer of just strangeness.
They certainly do. He's described as constantly listening to old German DDR Schlager music. But specifically, yeah, the source details his preference for what the buyer called child molester Schlager. Lyrics like, "Come, let's hide from daddy," apparently sung by an old man. And this video, along with something described as the International Pedophile Flag, was the background on his PlayStation 3.
A flag? The buyer was shocked by that, wasn't he?
Profoundly shocked, said he wasn't even aware such a thing existed. And then his politics. Equally bizarre. A convinced Green Party voter. Not for environmental reasons, though. He genuinely believed they'd once pushed to legalize child abuse in their early days, and he hoped they'd bring it back.
As horrifying motivation. And his fashion sense.
Added to the unsettling persona, yeah. Favored a cowboy look, complete with chaps, or as the source graphically puts it, assless leather pants.
Just a grotesque combination. And you mentioned castration earlier. The source brings up a really important point about its effectiveness or lack thereof in this context.
Right, this is where the reality inside the facility really seems to clash with maybe common assumptions. The Indian fan and others there, apparently, opted for surgical testicle removal, a form of chemical castration, instead of the ongoing injections, partly due to his other conditions like AIDS and hepatitis C, which made injections tricky.
Okay, so they opted for the surgery, but did it work? Did it curb the desire or prevent reoffending?
Well, that's the critical point from the patient accounts. Multiple individuals, despite these procedures, reported that sexual desire remained strong, sex was still possible, and even more concerning, some patients did reoffend after release, directly challenging the clinic's apparent assumption that these measures made them harmless for discharge.
So the clinic might be relying on something that isn't actually effective.
That's the implication, and the source makes it clear these procedures, while technically voluntary, were often subtly tied to perceived progress, to potential release. It creates this really complex, ethically murky situation. Patients might agree, hoping for freedom, whether it truly worked or not.
That is chilling,
Yes.
especially for discharge decisions. And speaking of health and practices, there was that alarming event with medication.
Yes, very early in the buyer's time on Station 7A, a patient, early 50s, died from the regular intake of psychopharmaca. And the term sudden death was explicitly listed as a side effect on the medication's own package insert.
Listed right on the package.
Right.
And it wasn't an isolated case.
No. The source indicates he wasn't the only one to die from medication around that time. You can imagine the impact. Widespread concern among patients. Some started outright refusing their meds. And this specific death, it really solidified the buyer's own decision. A steadfast refusal to take any medications throughout his entire time there.
Understandable.
Yes.
Completely. Given that environment, that level of distress. But beyond the institutional stuff, the day-to-day reality, the hygiene issues, especially with the Indian fan, sound truly horrific. Here's where it gets really interesting. Describe the daily horror of that room.
The sensory assault was just constant, profound. There was always this pervasive smell, whatever the Indian fan had eaten, mixed with this distinct stomach acid kind of smell from his artificial anus. And his nightly ritual, particularly stomach churning.
What did he do?
He'd clean his artificial anus right there in the shared room every night, leaving a fresh, sort of 30-centimeter diameter bloodstain on the floor. Then he'd take a tissue, wipe the area, and here's the really disturbing part. He'd flip the tissue, grab the bloody side, and keep wiping.
Oh, my God.
Then dispose of it without ever washing his hands. And then proceed to touch everything, door handles, furniture, everything, with infected fingers. A severe biohazard, especially with his confirmed AIDS and hepatitis C diagnoses.
That's beyond dangerous. Did the staff not see this?
The buyer noted that nurses wore latex gloves just to enter their room, yet the buyer had to live and sleep there, 247, enduring that level of biodanger constantly. Just to clarify, AIDS, acquired immune deficiency syndrome caused by HIV, collapses the immune system, primarily transmitted via sexual contact, blood, fatal if untreated, and hepatitis C, serious liver inflammation, also bloodborne sexual transmission possible, often leads to liver cancer later on.
Just sickening conditions. And he had some kind of plan, didn't he, to exploit this?
He did, a deliberate, incredibly brazen plan to get himself discharged, his grounds, unacceptable hygienic conditions.
Conditions he was creating.
Exactly. He actively trashed the room, smeared feces from his pouch on the bathroom walls. Then, with unbelievable hypocrisy, he'd loudly complained to staff about the mess, demanding immediate release. The buyer actually caught him red-handed, smearing feces after using the bathroom, confirming the whole deceitful act.
Unbelievable. And his excuse for not showering.
His ultimate excuse, repeated constantly, was the risk of fatal infection. Because of the artificial anus and his conditions, he literally claimed death by showering. He wouldn't even do a simple basin wash, just compounded the whole unbearable situation. The manipulation is astounding.
And he wasn't the only one with hygiene issues, right? The second roommate, the hoarder.
No, he wasn't alone. The hoarder also never showered, ever. The buyer mentioned making at least 20 attempts to get him to wash. The only result was the hoarder rinsing himself with water at the sink, crucially without any soap.
Which probably just made it worse.
Exactly. Intensified the already putrid smell. His bedding described as brown private bedding. But it wasn't actually brown, it was the clinic's white bedding. So heavily soiled and crusted with filth, it had turned uniformly dark brown.
Grim. And the shoes.
Yeah. Oh, the shoes! The smell from his shoes was apparently shocking. He never took them off, not even to sleep. The buyer tells this story of waking up one night to this sudden, awful stench, realized the hoarder had just taken his shoes off right next to the buyer's bed, unleashing weeks of trapped odor.
Horrifying. But even that wasn't the worst of it with the hoarder, was it? The closet?
You're right. The absolute most extreme, frankly grotesque issue was the hoarder's closet, located directly by the buyer's head as he slept. It wasn't filled with clothes, it was filled with newspapers he never read. But the horrifying discovery was between the pages. He collected uneaten, rotting dinner, day after day.
Oh, no.
The contents eventually just fused together into what the buyer described as a single block of trash. Staff finally intervened after 4 months. 4 months, and what they found: 5 large blue trash bags full. Moldy sausage slices, plastic containers with white mold like cotton, large shrunken apples mistaken for cherries because they were so shriveled and dark.
Sleeping next to a hazardous waste dump, essentially.
Pretty much, yeah. A continuous source of putrefaction.
Yeah.
It speaks volumes about the collapse of basic dignity, the severe mental states, and the institution's failure to maintain even basic standards. How could that go on for 4 months?
It paints a picture of constant psychological warfare, doesn't it? Beyond the smells and sights, the room itself was just a constant assault.
Relentless chaos, absolutely.
Yeah.
3 TVs in the room, blasting at full volume, 204/7, just this perpetual cacophony, no peace. And no night rest either, because unlike other wards, no nightly confinement on this station. So the Indian fan, the hoarder, they were constantly finding others to talk to in the common room, coming back loudly, slamming the door, rolling cigarettes at all hours.
So the buyer was just trapped in this constant conflict.
Permanent state of conflict, arguing, exchanging threats daily. The Indian fan, for instance, brazenly threatened to drip his infectious hepatitis and AIDS blood into the buyer's mouth while he slept, or just outright kill him. Admitting he couldn't win a fair fight. Imagine living with that level of threat, physical and psychological, day in, day out. No escape.
Even the common areas weren't safe.
No respite there either. Fights, brawls were apparently commonplace. Every moment was just a test of endurance.
Truly sounds like no safe haven anywhere. Let's shift focus slightly. Another patient mentioned prominently is Rain. What was his story within this environment?
Rain was another memorable figure, kind of exemplified the complex, often desperate lives inside Blacksite Berlin. He was often broke, constantly asking the buyer for money, which was always refused. He did manage to borrow 300 euros from an older, smaller Turkish patient, though.
Let me guess, he didn't pay it back.
Predictably, no. And the consequence was brutal, immediate. The Turk paid a large Arab patient, noted as having a swastika tattoo on his chest, another 300 euros just to beat Rain up. And the Arab did it. Resulted in severe head injuries for Rain. Had to wear bandages for weeks. It's a chilling look at the kind of unregulated power dynamics, the self-administered justice inside.
Brutal. And Rain eventually made an escape attempt, didn't he? A pretty dramatic one.
He did. During a supervised group bicycle tour, he saw his chance. As the group turned, he just kept going straight, fell behind on purpose, then just rode off, effectively stealing the bike, too. Made his way back to his old neighborhood, Kreuzberg. Victoria Park, specifically, where he used to deal drugs.
But this time, he was homeless.
Yeah, homeless, trying to survive on the streets. Luckily for him, it was summer, so sleeping outside wasn't immediately life-threatening, but still incredibly tough.
And there was that bizarre story with the fox.
Right, it's fascinating. Sleeping on a park bench, he made that classic mistake, took his shoes off, put them beside him. A fox came along, snatched one. Rain woke up, thankfully, and chased the fox barefoot through the park until it dropped the shoe. Just illustrates the immediate, sometimes absurd challenges of street life.
So what happened after his time on the streets?
Well, just 10 days later, after using drugs, running out of money, he voluntarily returned to Blacksite Berlin penal psychiatry. The buyer saw him afterwards, said he was visibly about 15 kilograms lighter. A stark reminder of just how harsh life on the run is with no resources. Speaks volumes, really, that returning to a place like that became the better option.
What an ordeal. Okay, so back to the buyer's room situation. After finally getting away from the Indian fan and the hoarder, there's another startling development with a new roommate.
Yeah, after about half a year, felt like an eternity, I'm sure. The buyer was moved to a different triple room, and the shock was immediate. One of the new roommates was the potential rapist from the crisis ward, someone the buyer had a deeply disturbing history with.
Oh, wow. How did they manage that?
They were basically forced to get along. An unspoken agreement of silence about the past incident was established. But the buyer still recounted sleeping with one eye open, always uneasy, always vigilant. Significant relief only came when the potential rapist found another playmate, someone he had a seemingly consensual sexual relationship with. It diverted his attention.
And this potential rapist developed a new, very strange psychosis.
Yeah, this is truly bizarre. He started imagining people were quietly farting from meters away, constantly asking people, "Did you fart?" The buyer described it as a kind of black box thing in the brain, where a purely visual stimulus, seeing someone perhaps shift their weight, triggered a smell hallucination, a profound distortion of sensory perception.
Just incredible the things the mind can do under such stress. But amidst all this horror and chaos, the buyer actually had a surprising personal win.
Indeed. A strange silver lining. The buyer had quit smoking just before getting to Station 7, then gets put in a room with two heavy smokers. Constant smoke. But paradoxically, it didn't make him relapse. It actually created such a strong aversion, such a deep distaste, that it served as the best weaning imaginable. He found the constant exposure just killed any desire. Even today, he says, smoking around him doesn't affect him. Resilience in a strange form.
That's remarkable, finding something positive there. Okay, final roommate story. The smoker, or the incinerator.
Ah, yes, the smoker. Another layer of constant sensory assault. His unique habit involved his ashtray. A tall, round, rotating tobacco tin. He used it not just for ash, but as a reservoir for all his cigarette butts, which he then used to roll new cigarettes from.
Recycling butts? Okay, and the incinerator part.
Well, the buildup of waste in this tin repeatedly caused small, smoldering fires inside the tin, constantly emitting this column of smoke that smelled distinctly of burnt plastic and cigarette filters. The buyer called it a mini blast furnace, like a tiny, dirty factory chimney right there in the room.
And he just let it smolder.
Refused to extinguish them, despite requests, seemingly oblivious to the smoke, the smell, the danger.
That constant provocation.
Right.
It must have driven the others mad. Did it lead to a breaking point?
It absolutely did. The stress built up, not just for the buyer, but for the potential rapist, too. He finally snapped, reached his limit. In this dramatic act of desperation, he grabbed the entire burning, smoldering ash and butt tin from the smoker and dumped the entire contents, ashes, butts, fire, everything, directly into the smoker's freshly made coffee, in a large mug.
Oh my goodness. What did the smoker do? How did he react to having his coffee turned into a literal ashtray?
His reaction was perhaps the most unsettling part of all. No anger, no shock, not even surprise. The buyer recounts he just drank the coffee, completely apathetically, as if having cigarette butts and ash floating in his morning brew was totally normal. He seemed so profoundly detached, maybe lost in his own world. The buyer noted he appeared to be not noticing anything anymore, just highlights the extreme mental states there.
Wow. Just wow. So, reflecting on all this, what do we really take away from such a raw, unfiltered account of life inside Blacksite Berlin penal psychiatry? It really underscores the human element, doesn't it? The resilience needed, and just the sheer strangeness behind those closed doors.
It absolutely does. This deep dive, it lays bare the extremes of human behavior, the immense challenges of living cheek by jowl with profound mental health crises, severe hygiene failures, and all within the unique, unsettling context of an institution described as a secret prison, operating under this alleged international deep state mandate. These aren't just random anecdotes. They paint this consistent picture of a system operating way outside conventional norms, where care and confinement are just disturbingly blurred.
Which really makes you think.
Yeah, it raises that important question for us as observers. How do we even process such vivid, unsettling, factual occurrences as presented in the source? And what does it tell us about the hidden corners of our world, about the profound, often harrowing experiences of individuals navigating these kinds of systems?
Indeed. As we wrap up, maybe consider the vast, often unseen landscape of human experience. The incredible stories that remain untold, just waiting for someone to bring them into the light. The buyer's account from the World Succession Deed 1400 is one such unvarnished truth. It makes you wonder, what other conspiracy facts might be out there just waiting for someone brave enough to share their deepest, most unsettling realities?